Hi, everyone. I want to introduce you to a brand new product or approach, you could say, that we're taking to human design. It's based under the brand Human Design Made Simple, and yet it's got this grand title, Human Design Masterclass. Now, sounds great, but what gives me the right to even launch that? Well, I want to give you some background now on my history. I'm literally 3 months short of 70 years old now. And I want to give you an insight to the unique upbringing I had, the unique experiences I have in my past, where I can bring in the future of human design to the present and lay it against a backdrop of the past that gives me the authority to do this. Not only the authority, inner authority, the passion to do it, but the authority in terms of real life experience to be able to take something that Ra really established incredibly deep and strong foundations for and take it to the next level. So I was born in Melbourne, Australia, way back in 1948, December 1948. And I grew up in a traditionally Catholic family and went to one of the best public schools in Melbourne. And there I majored in sciences, maths. My father was the chief financial officer of what became Foster's Brewing. So he had an incredible background of service in the military during the war, and then a huge experience of running a major organisation financially and in terms of numbers. And so I went to school, I graduated from university with an honours degree in geology and geophysics. That was the outcome of that. So practical sciences, down-to-earth sciences was what I ended up coming out of with that. And in the process, I was involved in a lot of sports. I surfed since I was really young. We were born near the beach and I swam and naturally moved into surfing, but also was the champion at my school in 800 metres and one of the top people in the whole state for that. And I was the captain of a cricket team and a football team. So I had that sort of experience backing me up. There's a lot of experience in that. It's not, look at me, I did that, but it's the experience you gain out of winning and losing and putting it all together that really, really counts. So, and pushing yourself too hard and learning to ease up. There's so many lessons that are there that a person experiences, mainly experientially, because our mental focus in those days was on passing exams. So I came out of university having worked for a few major geology and geophysics companies. And then just the way it ended broke something. And on an insight, on a whim, it was part of those times, the very early 70s, I packed up with my partner at the time and we headed north to a place called Nimbin. Now in Australia, that's famous now, wasn't then, no one had ever heard of it except the people who lived there. And it became famous as the beginning of the whole alternative hippie generation in Australia, the sort of seed for which that grew out of. Well, I turned up 8 months before that happened, went surfing in one of the greatest surfing spots in Australia close by, and then got to witness and become a part of the whole hippie alternative generation being born in Australia. That was a fascinating experience. A couple of years there, and then I had enough because my body couldn't take it. Having alternative experiences and living that way was great, in the sense that it opened my mind to new possibilities and opened me to new ways of living and got me in touch with the earth. And, simple things like living off the earth, farming, that sort of stuff. But there was more. And I ended up going back to Melbourne. And it was there I came across a gift I had for teaching, and also where I found someone who could show me what I was looking for within inside of me. That's where I met a person who's known now as Prima. And for the last 42, 43 years, I've benefited from the fact that he showed me how to go within and get in touch with, as they say, what you're looking for is inside of you. And I have practiced that non-stop for 43 years, not because I was part of a club, which he made it very clear that's not what he was about, not because I became part of a scene. I was for a while and then broke out of that, but because there was an experience inside of me already that I was able to tap into that I've found to be absolutely foundational to enjoying being a human being and enjoying my life. So that's something, Prem I've talked to him, I've spent a lot of time around him, I've seen him develop all around the world. But one of the beauties of that was there was no compunction to abandon my own life. In fact, it gave me the inspiration to discover what life really had for me. And so I became a teacher for 4 years at secondary level, for a couple of years at tertiary level, and did really well. I found I was great at it, not by being conventional, but being in unconventional in a way that really worked. And it was demonstrated because I was getting 100% pass rates at the top of high school and really good results with tertiary students. In practical areas, it wasn't like in some academic study, it was in people doing studies beyond school, but how to apply it in the real world. And so there was this interesting balance going on. And then, between how do things work in the real world, how do you master being a human being in real life, and at the same time open yourself up to new possibilities, new ideas, and the fullness of your potential as a human being. That's been my life for 50, 60 years. And it was like my longing even before that. Not that I knew it at the time. And so it went further, and I discovered another teacher who was able to introduce me to the cutting edge and of human potential, of metaphysics, and even what spirituality really is, no matter what part of the world you come from. And I worked with them, and I still work with their information for over 30 years. They're a channeled entity called Lazarus, for those of you who are insatiably curious. But what I walked away from that, and I haven't walked away, but I'm now again back in embracing this in the real world in a life of my own. And I've been blessed to have teachers who never demanded anything less than that, actually. They wanted you, they were encouraging me to go out and apply it and live it in the real world. And that taught me what those areas of spirituality, metaphysics, and human potential truly have to offer beyond what they were even offering at the time. And it's given me a background to see what's possible. And 10 years ago, I moved to the United States. Now, my timing wasn't great in terms of the business that I was involved with because the economic crash happened. But it was great in terms of discovering human design, because that's where I discovered human design. and started getting into it. Now, I never got involved with a human design crowd or a club. I always embraced it from separate from that. But it gave me an incredible appreciation with my previous background of, this is great. It's explained in an incredibly complicated way, and complex way is probably a better way of putting it, by someone who really knew what they were talking about from their perspective, absolutely, and were conveying the fundamentals really clearly. I mean, Ra did an extraordinary job. And yet I was always looking at it from the point of view of my own background and how does this really work in the real world? What's the spirit behind it? What's the true meaning behind it? And how do you apply it? And I remember I just saw this morning, a quote from Ra himself saying, learning human design is not the same as living it. Actually, it was living human design is not the same as learning human design. And I was blessed to be put in a situation where that became very real for me and very obvious. And I was able to embrace that. And so for 10 years now, see, before that, I left this whole chunk of my life out. And this is really important when it comes to human design. When I went back to Melbourne, and when I'd, in a sense, moved on from being involved with Prem in a very dedicated manner, you would say, where it was like 7 days a week, 24 hours, what I was focusing on. When I moved out of that, I discovered that I had a gift for working with numbers. That's where maybe my heritage from my father up there comes in. But I had a gift for working with numbers and understanding what was called numerology in those days, where it came from, what it was about, and how to take it to a whole new level. And I did that, and I wrote the book on it. I wrote a book on it years later. But I started consulting and guiding people with that knowledge, and then took it into areas like astrology and brought it up to scratch for someone like me who's a trained scientist and very much in the practical world, and then developed whole new techniques of applying astrology to things like relationships and your direction in life and getting your timing right in the real world. And that opened up a whole new area of having maths, as I call numerology, and physics, as I call astrology, old physics and old maths. Having those, it enabled, and having a lot of experience in teaching chemistry, I started looking at the chemistry of these things and how they, how they reacted and how they produced really useful products and how they affected people's lives, the chemistry between people, for years, and was a consultant and a teacher of those things for years before I came across human design. And when I came across human design, it was like, my God, this works with mathematics and physics, or numerology and astrology as they used to be taught. And then it brings it into the real world of science. But the whole goal is to live a great life while you're alive in a human body, in what is labelled the real world. Might not be as real, but it's the life that we have. It's the gift that we have right now. And so I took to human design, no matter how complicated the writings about it and the teachings about it were. And Ra was a very complex person in a lot of ways in the way he presented it. I was going on this thing that I'd been taught years ago. It was first mentioned to me by a guy called Denny Johnson, way back in Australia. And I never forgot it. And it's true. The advanced work in anything is the basics done really well. Now, I've embraced and taught and consulted in human design for 10 years now. It's over 10 years. And I've worked with a business partner, Daryl Reeves, on putting together programs that really explained human design, and done that several times. The basics and the in-depth stuff. And now it's time to make it not simplistic, but to make it relatable and simple. Human design made simple. But to do that with the advanced work being the basics done really well, it's time for a masterclass. Now, at almost 70, I've put a lot of time in mastering the understanding of what it is to be alive as a human being, to master and understand my life and how it works, to master relationships, which is something that I've been blessed in the last 4 years since I came to Thailand to really come to grips with and live, not just philosophize about, not just talk about, to move past just the dating into relating, but also relating in business, relating to yourself and relating to the world that we live in and relating to the people in it, where 1 + 1 = 11, where you create, exponential success, synergistic, they call it in science and business. And so I feel prepared. Daryl, my business partner, the people we're working with in the background now, they're prepared for this. They're asking for this. They're wanting to do something beyond themselves, where they really take the benefits of what human design has to offer. To be a human and understand how you're designed so that you can be yourself, not just philosophize about it, but live as who you are, make decisions as who you are, recognize what you bring to the table as a unique human being. And then, if it's important to you in your life or you're ready for it, or it makes sense because of whatever you're doing, to take it into the depths, and really understand how to turn up fully as who you are as an individual and share your unique perspective and awareness with the world. To really contribute. And one of the beauties about being in your 60s or almost 70s is you go from trying to prove yourself to trying to get, in fact, it happens earlier, but it's happening for me now. You go from wanting to generously giving. It's such a turn on. It really is. It's so fulfilling. It's not a turn on as you'd think of it as a 20-year-old. It just lights you up no matter what age you are. It opens your heart, and you find what it is that you have that you can give generously. And then you just wait for and respond to the opportunities to do it, to share, to give generously of who you are. This is what this is about for me. I know that's the same for Daryl. And this is what we're doing here, is respecting Ra and the incredible work that he did by developing it with integrity and from experience and taking it to another level. Making human design easy for human beings to relate to apply, to appreciate, to enjoy, to benefit from. So we're opening this up in the next week, the Human Design Masterclass, and a lot of things that go with it. And I'm going to be taking what I've learned, not only in human design, but with numbers, with science and astrology, with what's real about spiritual stuff. I mean, how do you live as a spiritual being in the real world rather than just being off in purely in your imagination? You know, you use imagination, but you benefit from it, and everyone around you truly does. What does it mean to be metaphysical? You know, it's physics, but it's physics that's integrated with all the dimensions of life. And what is your potential as a human being? You know, for God's sake, while you're here, get the best out of it. You know, part of my generosity is to help people who didn't have the resources, just to realise their potential because they've got resources, you know, moolah, money, you know. But it's also my pleasure to do that on other levels rather than only financial. And so if that rings a bell with you, if that's something you would like to pursue, you know, stay in contact, get in touch, check out the Human Design Masterclass and the other programs we go with it. And if it's my absolute pleasure and privilege to work with you now or in the future, I look forward to it. I truly do, because that's the most satisfying and fulfilling part of my life, is to truly help people blossom and bloom and enjoy the beauty and the pleasure of being a human being while you're alive. Talk to you soon.